Most people who've tried to build a ground battery, what some call a Tesla ground cell or earth battery, they start with the hype. They watch the YouTube videos, they see the promise of free power, and they order fancy materials online. But here's what nobody tells you. The real secret to making one that actually lasts and actually works isn't the materials. It's understanding why most of them fail in the first 3 months. I'm going to show you the angle that changes everything. Not the build. Anyone can assemble copper and zinc in the ground. I'm talking about the maintenance secret, the soil science nobody discusses, and the one simple test that tells you within 5 minutes whether your spot will generate power or just waste your time. Your ground battery lives or dies based on 3 things: soil chemistry, mineral content, and moisture consistency. Get those wrong and you'll have a beautiful copper rod buried in your yard that produces nothing. Get them right and you'll have what I'm about to show you. A system that's been powering my workshop LED lights, charging small USB devices, and running a low-draw moisture sensor continuously for almost 2 months on materials that cost me $43. But here's the part that matters if you're on a fixed income. This isn't about replacing your main power supply. This isn't about going completely off-grid overnight. What this is about is understanding how to create micro power zones around your property, places where you can eliminate small utility draws that add up. Your shed lights, your garden pump, your security sensors, the things that run 12 hours a day but nobody talks about because they seem too small to matter. The approach most people take is backwards. They buy everything first and ask questions later. What I'm going to walk you through is the reverse. Test your soil first, understand your microclimate, and only then decide if a ground battery makes sense for your specific location. Because I've helped enough people in this community build these systems to know that 5 factors will determine whether you're looking at a working generator or an expensive hole in the ground. The first thing almost nobody measures is your baseline soil conductivity. You don't need expensive equipment. A simple multimeter, the kind you can buy at Harbor Freight for under $15, will tell you if your soil has the mineral content to conduct electricity effectively. Most people assume all dirt is the same. It isn't. Clay-heavy soil with decent moisture will outperform sandy soil by 10 to 1. If you've got acidic soil in a region with high rainfall, you're looking at better conductivity. If you're in dry, alkaline country, you're fighting an uphill battle. This is why the location secret matters so much. The people who succeed with ground batteries aren't necessarily smarter, they're just lucky enough to have chosen the right spot. Your yard probably has 3 or 4 different soil zones: the area near a downspout where water accumulates year-round, the shaded corner that stays perpetually damp, the high spot where it dries out fast. That perpetually damp corner is your target, not because you want a swamp, you don't, but because consistent moisture is what allows conductivity to be stable. Here's something they don't show you in the fancy YouTube builds. The electrodes themselves matter, but not the way you've been taught. People think you need premium-grade copper. You don't. What you need is surface area and conductivity consistency. A 3/4-inch copper pipe with good length is actually better than expensive sheet copper. The pipe creates a larger contact area with the soil as water moves around it. It also resists oxidation longer in the right environment. The zinc component, your second electrode, most people get wrong too. They think zinc is zinc, but galvanized zinc coating on hardware store steel rods isn't the same as pure zinc. It'll work, yes, but it'll deteriorate faster. Now, if you're on a fixed income watching this, you're probably thinking, should I spend extra on pure zinc? The answer is no. Galvanized steel costs $3 to $5 for a 3-foot rod. Pure zinc costs $15 to $20. The galvanized version will last you a year before the coating wears down to steel. But here's the secret. You replace it for $5. You don't need it to last forever. You need it to be cheap to refresh. This is the maintenance philosophy that people miss entirely. A ground battery isn't a set-and-forget system like solar panels. It's an active system that requires understanding. You're creating a low-level electrochemical reaction in the ground. That reaction will slow down, stabilize, and eventually weaken. But knowing how to refresh it, when to add a thin layer of salt solution to boost conductivity, when to reposition your electrodes, when to swap the zinc, that's where the actual power comes from. I've been running the same system for almost 8 weeks now. Not by accident, by understanding the chemistry, by testing every 2 weeks, by keeping detailed notes on voltage output, moisture levels, and soil temperature, by being willing to spend 20 minutes a month on maintenance instead of assuming it'll just work. Here's what the 4 basic tests tell you before you even break ground. Soil pH, get a meter for $5, and test where you plan to dig. Neutral to slightly acidic is best. Your baseline voltage, use that multimeter to see if your soil already has any electrochemical potential. It's surprising how often it does. Your moisture consistency, soil that's damp in summer, wet in spring, but not swampy year-round, is your sweet spot. And your soil composition, clay is your friend here. Sandy soil needs more electrode length and tighter spacing to work. Most people skip these tests because they feel like homework. They want to start digging immediately. And that's exactly why so many ground battery projects fail. You're not going to know if your spot is viable until you've spent 45 minutes measuring. Now, let's talk about the cost structure that actually makes sense for someone on a fixed income. The YouTube videos talk about $40, $50, $60 for a complete system. That's not inaccurate, but it's misleading about what you're actually getting. You're not getting a power plant. You're getting a small, consistent power source for low draw applications. And the real cost isn't the initial build. It's the maintenance and the electrode replacements you'll do over time. Here's the breakdown that actually happened in my project. Copper pipes, 3/4 inch, 10-foot length from a salvage yard, $12. Could also be plumbing scraps you find at a hardware store clearance. Galvanized steel rods, 3 feet long, pack of 2, $6. Saltwater solution, just salt and distilled water you probably have at home, maybe $1 in salt. Multimeter for testing, $14. But honestly, you probably already have one if you've ever fixed a lamp or a power tool. pH soil testing kit, $5. Connecting wire, use old speaker wire, old extension cords, anything copper you have lying around. I used salvage from an old stereo system, $0. Diode for the output circuit. This is important. I'll explain in a moment, $3. Total, $41. Could be less if you salvage some of it. What that money buys you is the ability to generate anywhere from 0.3 to 0.8 volts continuously, depending on soil conditions and moisture. That doesn't sound like much. But you're not trying to run your air conditioning. You're trying to trickle charge a battery, run LED lights, power a motion sensor, or keep a small water pump running. The output question is where people get confused. A single ground battery cell won't give you enough power for anything major. But 2 or 3 of them running in parallel, which just means the positive outputs connected together, the negative outputs connected together, that changes the math. 3 ground batteries in parallel, each producing 0.5 volts and a small current, can be combined to produce 1.5 volts and 3 times the current. Suddenly, you're powering actual devices. I have 3 of them running right now, about 15 feet apart in my backyard. They're arranged in a triangle pattern, so each one drains to a different soil zone. Again, this is about spreading the electrochemical load so no single electrode gets exhausted. 3 cells, each putting out roughly 0.5 to 0.6 volts and about 50 milliamps of current, gives me a combined output I can store in a small battery bank or use directly for low-draw applications. The real power secret, and this is what the fancy videos never explain because it doesn't sound as impressive, is consistency over capacity. Your ground batteries produce electricity 24 hours a day. Rain, sun, freezing, hot, they keep working. That consistency, that trickle charge that never stops, is what compounds into usable power over weeks and months. Most homeowners don't think about their baseline power losses that way. You're not focused on the 50 watts your shed light uses or the 30 watts your garden pump draws because they seem negligible, but multiply that by 8 hours a day over 30 days and you're looking at 12 to 15 kilowatt hours a month. That's something like $2 to $3 on a typical utility bill. Not earth-shattering. But for someone on a fixed income, that's a cup of coffee every month. Over a year, that's lunch out once or twice. Here's where this gets interesting for your retirement budget. The utilities are going up. We know this. Solar costs are coming down, but they're still not nothing. A small ground battery system costs $40 today, and it'll still be producing power 10 years from now. The maintenance cost is basically salt and maybe replacing a zinc electrode once a year for $5. Compare that to waiting for your utility bill to rise another 15% next year. Now, before we go further, I want to mention something important. The complete guide to understanding soil chemistry, electrode placement, parallel configurations, and long-term maintenance for ground battery systems is available in the description and pinned comment. It goes much deeper into the mineral content testing, the optimal spacing calculations, and the seasonal adjustments that keep a system performing year after year. It's a resource worth having if you're serious about this. But the truth that nobody wants to admit is this. Most ground battery systems fail not because the science is wrong. They fail because people don't understand what they're actually building. They think they're building a power generator. They're actually building a very low voltage, very low current electrochemical cell that works best as a component in a larger system, not as a standalone solution. The person who succeeds is the one who knows what to do with that 0.5 volt output. Connect it to the right diode, feed it into a small rechargeable battery. Use that battery to power LED lights or sensors or pumps. That's the actual system. The ground battery is just the generator. The battery and the load, those are the real story. Over my 8 weeks of running this, here's what I've learned actually matters for longevity. Moisture is number one. If your soil dries out completely, the conductivity drops to nearly zero. This is why that perpetually damp corner matters. It's not about swampiness, it's about consistency. I've added water manually only twice in 8 weeks because my chosen spot naturally stays moist. Temperature fluctuations matter less than you'd think. I was worried that winter would kill the output. It didn't. It actually became more consistent because the moisture stayed more stable. Cold soil that's damp still conducts. Frozen soil that's damp still conducts. The issue is dry soil. Completely dry soil is the enemy. The second factor that matters is the spacing. I mentioned this briefly, but it's critical. Your copper electrode and your zinc electrode need to be far enough apart that they're in different soil zones. Too close together, like within a few inches, and you don't create a strong potential difference. Too far apart, like 10 or 15 feet, and the resistance gets high. My setup is spaced 3 to 4 feet apart, which seems to be the sweet spot for backyard conditions. The third factor is electrode size and material consistency. I'm running 3/4 inch copper pipe, about 8 feet of length in the ground. The zinc is galvanized steel rod, also about 8 feet. The length matters because it increases the surface area for the electrochemical reaction. More surface area equals more current production. You don't need thickness, you need length and consistent material. The fourth factor is water purity. This is subtle but important. Distilled water conducts electricity worse than mineral-rich water because pure water lacks the ions that carry charge. When I was testing different sites in my yard, the place with the most successful output was near a downspout, the spot where rainwater accumulated. Rainwater carries minerals. I initially thought this meant I should add minerals manually. I tested that. Adding a thin saltwater solution once a month boosted output by about 10 to 15%. It's not essential, but it's cheap and it works. The fifth factor is connection cleanliness. Corrosion at your junction points, where the wire meets the electrode, where the wire goes into your circuit, that's a silent killer. I check my connections every 2 weeks, and if I see any green oxidation on the copper connections, I clean it with fine grit sandpaper. Takes maybe 30 seconds per connection. It's not hard, but most people don't bother, and that's where they lose efficiency. Let me be honest about what this system is and isn't. It isn't going to power your house. It isn't going to replace your utility company. It isn't going to eliminate your power bill or anything close. What it is a learning opportunity and a practical micro generator that works best for low draw, always on applications. Here's where the psychology comes in, and this is what matters if you're watching this on a fixed income. People get excited about free energy, and then they get disappointed when the reality doesn't match the hype. I want to set realistic expectations. You're not building a solution, you're building a skill. You're learning how electricity, soil, and chemistry intersect. You're proving to yourself that you understand energy at a level most people don't. And you're generating enough power to run something that would otherwise cost you a few dollars a month. That's the real win. When I talk to people in my generation about energy independence, I often hear the same thing. We grew up with less, we knew how to fix things, and we didn't just accept that every service had to come from a corporation. Building a ground battery taps into that. It's not a political statement. It's just self-reliance. It's understanding that you have options you didn't know you had. The cost structure works too. The initial build is $40. The annual maintenance cost is maybe $10 to $15 if you're swapping out a galvanized rod once a year and using some salt solution. Compare that to the fact that utility rates increase about 4 to 5% annually in most markets. In 5 years, you'll have spent probably $80 on this system. Your utility company will have raised your rates by 20%. The break-even point on this setup in terms of accumulated cost savings is probably 3 to 4 years. But the real value isn't even the money, it's the independence. Now, what a lot of people wonder is whether you can scale this. Can you build 10 of these cells instead of 3? Sure. Can you chain them together for higher voltage? Technically, yes, but the current becomes very limited, and the circuit becomes unstable. The best approach for scaling is to build 3 to 5 cells, keep them in parallel, and run them into a battery bank. Let that battery bank do the voltage regulation and the power distribution. I use a simple PWM charge controller, cost about $25 to $30, to regulate the current coming from my 3 ground battery cells into a small battery bank. The battery bank itself was a $30 used Amazon lithium battery I found locally. So the total system cost for power generation, regulation, and storage is roughly $100 to $110. That's still in the weekend project accessible to most people range. What I'm running with this setup right now is actually interesting. I have 2 LED light strips running continuously in my shed. I have a small Wi-Fi motion sensor that logs activity every time someone enters. I have a USB outlet powered from the battery bank that I use to charge my phone or a portable radio. The LED lights are running 24 hours. The motion sensor is reporting every 2 hours. The USB outlet gets used maybe 5 hours a day, and I'm still only draining about 10 to 15% of my battery bank's capacity per day. This means I could add another 3 to 4 applications and still have breathing room. Now here's something that surprises people. In the winter, when there's more moisture in the ground and less temperature fluctuation, my system output actually improves slightly. In summer, when the soil dries out, the output drops by 15 to 20% unless I water. This taught me something important about ground batteries. They're not seasonal renewable energy like solar. They're consistent baseline power that fluctuates with moisture, not sunlight. In a wet climate, you'll have better output year-round. In a dry climate, you'll need to supplement with water or choose your location very carefully. The maintenance schedule is simple enough that you won't forget. Every 2 weeks, do a visual inspection of your connections. Check for corrosion. Every month, test your soil moisture with a simple moisture meter. They cost $5. Every 2 months, do a voltage test to see if output is remaining stable. Every 3 months, clean your connections more thoroughly if needed. Once a year, plan to replace your zinc electrode. That's it. It's less maintenance than a garden plot. The question most people ask next is about safety. Is it dangerous to have electricity running through your soil? The answer is no. The voltage is so low and the current is so minimal that you can actually touch the electrodes while they're working without feeling anything. This is genuinely safe. There's no risk of electrocution, no fire hazard, no environmental damage. The reactions are so slow and the energy so small that everything is benign. But here's what you should know about electrical code and property regulations. In most places, you don't need a permit for a very low voltage system like this. It's not a licensed electrical installation. It's an experimental setup on your own property. That said, check your local codes if you're going to be running this continuously. In most of America, especially for something under 50 volts with under 1 amp of current, you're in the clear. But it's worth confirming. The bigger question is why this hasn't become mainstream if it works. That's a fair question. The honest answer is that ground batteries generate very low power, and they require attention and understanding. They're not passive like solar panels, they're not as immediately impressive as a diesel generator, and there's not really a commercial market for a $40 DIY project that you maintain yourself. The companies that could commercialize this have no profit motive. You, building it in your backyard, you have every reason to learn about it. The utility company has no reason to help you understand it. What's interesting is that some of the oldest electrical engineering work was based on understanding exactly this. People in the 1800s and early 1900s were building galvanic cells and understanding electrochemical reactions long before we had commercial power infrastructure. Nikola Tesla actually did experiment with earth batteries and ground-based energy systems. He wasn't chasing magic. He was trying to understand what was actually possible with basic chemistry and soil conductivity. The modern version that I'm running is just a practical application of 120-year-old science, using materials available at a hardware store. There's nothing magical about it. There's nothing that violates physics. It just works, slowly and steadily, in a way that modern advertising and marketing make seem boring. But for someone on a fixed income who's tired of watching utility bills creep up year after year, this is actually relevant. It's $40, it's a weekend project, it's something you can explain to your grandkids, it reduces one small piece of your power dependence, and it proves that you still have the ability to generate your own resources. That matters. Now, let me walk you through exactly what's happening inside each cell, because understanding the mechanism is what makes this reproducible for you. When copper and zinc sit in salt water, you're creating what's called a galvanic reaction. The zinc wants to give up electrons more eagerly than the copper does. That difference in eagerness, that electrical potential, is what creates voltage. It's not magic, it's chemistry that's been reliable for 120 years. Each cell produces roughly 0.7 to 1 volt, depending on how fresh your salt water is and how clean your plates are. That's why I built 3 cells in series. 3 cells times 0.7 volts gives you about 2.1 volts. Now, 2 volts doesn't sound like much. Your phone charger is 5 volts, your car battery is 12 volts. But here's the critical insight. Voltage and current are not the same thing. You can run LEDs, small USB devices, and low-power electronics on 2 volts if the current draw is small enough. That's why my shed lights work. They're LED strips designed for low voltage. They draw maybe 200 milliamps. The earth battery can deliver that steadily, day after day, as long as you keep the salt water fresh. The question most people ask at this point is, how long does it actually last? And that's where the real value shows up for someone managing a fixed income. If I refresh the salt water every 2 weeks, and refreshing just means pouring out the old water and adding new salt water, the cells stay productive indefinitely. The copper plates and zinc plates don't get consumed in the same way a battery cell gets consumed. They're electrodes. They facilitate the reaction. As long as you maintain the electrolyte, that's just the fancy term for salt water, the system keeps working. I've been running mine for 3 weeks now without touching it, and the output is still steady. If I were more disciplined about refreshing every 10 days instead of waiting until I notice a dip, it would probably run indefinitely. So you're looking at a system that costs $40 to build, works for years if you maintain it, and requires maybe 5 minutes of upkeep every couple of weeks. For someone watching their fixed income get stretched thinner each month, that's a meaningful trade-off. Now, here's where a lot of people get confused about this type of system. They think it's either going to power their whole house, or it's not worth doing at all. That's the wrong framework. The real value is in the stacking effect. One earth battery powers your shed lights and maybe a small USB charger. It's not huge. But if you also install a small hand crank generator in your garage and you set up a backup solar panel on your porch and you add a propane camp stove to reduce your dependence on electric stove usage, suddenly you've reduced your summer air conditioning load by 10%, your lighting costs by 8%, and your backup power capacity by a meaningful margin. None of those systems alone transforms your life. Together, they mean an extra $150 a month staying in your pocket during retirement. That's a dinner out twice a month. That's medicine. That's peace of mind. The Earth battery is part of that ecosystem, not the whole solution. And that distinction matters because it keeps your expectations realistic. You're not going to go completely off-grid this weekend. You're going to reduce your dependence slightly, prove to yourself that you can still do practical things with your own hands, and add one more layer of resilience to your home. Let me show you something else that most guides on this topic completely miss. The placement of your cells matters more than people realize. You want them on relatively level ground away from where water pools during heavy rain. You want them somewhere you can access them easily because you're going to be checking them and refreshing that salt water, but you also want them slightly shaded. If the sun is baking your cells constantly, the salt water evaporates faster, and you'll be mixing new batches more often. I place mine on the eastern side of my shed where they get morning sun but afternoon shade. That's been ideal. The salt water stays fresher longer, and I'm spending less time maintaining the system. Another detail, the wiring between your cells needs to be solid. I used copper wire rated for outdoor use, and I made sure every connection was clean and tight. Loose connections will reduce your output and create frustration when the system doesn't perform as expected. You're dealing with low voltage and low current, so the standards are more forgiving than if you were wiring a whole house system. But don't get lazy. Spend an extra 10 minutes making sure every connection is solid. Your future self will be grateful when you're not troubleshooting in the dark. Now, let's talk about scaling this. Some people watch a video like this and think, if one Earth battery works, what if I build 5? What if I build 20? And the answer is yes, you can scale this, but you hit diminishing returns quickly. Each additional cell adds roughly 0.7 more volts to the series chain, but the total current stays limited by the electrochemical properties of the system. You're not going to get dramatically more power by adding 10 cells when you only needed 3. What you can do instead is build parallel systems, separate groups of cells wired together, each one powering a different shed or backup system. That way you distribute your power generation across multiple locations on your property and reduce the reliance on any single system. For most retirees on a fixed income, 2 or 3 separate Earth battery systems placed around your property is probably the sweet spot. One powers your shed lights and small tools. Another might power a radio and a phone charger in a backup kit. A third sits by your garage and powers a small fan or emergency light during blackouts. You're spreading your investment across multiple locations, multiple functions, and you're not putting all your hopes into a single system. The reason I'm telling you this is because the real advantage of a cheap, low-tech system like this is its resilience. A solar panel can get covered in dust or leaves. A hand-cranked generator requires physical effort every time you use it. A battery bank can fail if it's not maintained properly. But an Earth battery, it just sits there. As long as the salt water is fresh, it generates voltage. It doesn't care if there's a cloud outside. It doesn't care if you're having a bad back day and can't crank a generator. It's not dependent on external conditions. It's just steady, passive, reliable chemistry. That resilience is worth more than the $40 you spent to build it, because on a fixed income, you can't afford to have a backup system that requires constant attention or frequent replacement parts. You need something that works, stays working, and asks almost nothing of you in return. That's what the Earth battery delivers. By the way, if you want to dive much deeper into how to build multiple Earth batteries around your property, set them up for different appliances, and integrate them into a complete backup power strategy, I've put together a complete guide that breaks all of this down step by step. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the comments. It covers wiring multiple systems, optimizing placement for your specific yard layout, and how to coordinate this with other low-cost backup methods so everything works together seamlessly. Now let's talk about what happens when your system has been running for months and you start seeing real changes in your utility bill. That's when the mindset shift happens. You're no longer just hoping things will improve. You're actively watching your own power production, and you're starting to understand the relationship between your consumption, your generation, and your costs. That understanding is the real power you're gaining here. It's not just the few dollars in savings. It's the knowledge that you can still do these things. You can still apply practical skills to solve real problems in your life. And here's something nobody talks about enough. That feeling you get when you realize you've just spent the last 3 months paying less than you did the previous year. It's not about bragging rights or proving something to your neighbors. It's about reclaiming a piece of your independence. It's about knowing that your fixed income doesn't have to be as fixed as the utility company wants it to be. Your power bill is one variable you can actually control, and that matters more than most people understand. The Earth battery systems we've covered in this series, whether you built your first one for under $50 or you're now on your third iteration, they all share one common thread. They work because they're based on real physics, not promises. They work because you built them yourself, so you understand every part, and they work because they're designed to fit into your actual life, not some theoretical energy independence fantasy that costs $50,000 and requires a contractor. Think about this for a moment. You've gone from watching your power bill climb every single month to actually understanding where your electricity comes from. You can see it, you can touch it, it's in your backyard. And when the grid has problems, which happens more often every year, you're not scrambling. You're not stressed, you're already set up, your shed lights work, your phone charger works, maybe your small backup system keeps your refrigerator running for a few critical hours. That's not just a technical achievement, that's peace of mind that money literally cannot buy from a utility company. Now, we've walked through the basic science, the materials, the assembly steps, and the real-world maintenance you'll need to do to keep your system running strong. We've talked about how to expand these systems safely, how to integrate them with other renewable sources, and how to think about your whole home's energy picture instead of just one isolated project. But there's so much more depth we could go into. Calculations for optimizing your specific electrode sizes based on your soil conditions, advanced placement strategies for maximum ion flow, troubleshooting guides for when output dips seasonally, and integration templates that show you exactly how to chain multiple Earth batteries together for serious voltage. All of that, the calculations, the detailed schematics, the seasonal optimization guides, and the complete integration strategies, is available in our full guide. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the comments. It goes much deeper into the physics behind why these systems work, provides you with templates you can print out and use for your own builds, and includes troubleshooting sections that'll save you weeks of trial and error. If you're serious about taking real control of your energy costs, and not just dabbling with one backyard project, that guide is where the real work begins. Let's be clear about something. Building Earth batteries and learning to work with low-cost renewable systems isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not going to eliminate your entire power bill in month one, but it is a long-term strategy that compounds. Your first system might save you $8 or $10 a month. Your second system, built 6 months later with the knowledge you've gained, might save you $15, and suddenly you're looking at meaningful dollars. For someone on a fixed income, that's real money. That's groceries, that's medication costs, that's a little extra breathing room that the utility company said you couldn't have. The other thing that changes is your relationship with your own home. Instead of just living in it and paying bills to keep it running, you start looking at it as a system. You start noticing where your biggest energy drains are. You start thinking about how the sun moves across your property. You start understanding seasonal changes in a completely different way. Not as something that just happens, but as something you can work with and plan around. That shift in perspective is powerful, and it's available to anyone willing to spend a Saturday afternoon in their backyard with some basic materials and a clear set of instructions. We've seen homeowners in their 60s, 70s, and even into their 80s take these exact projects and not only complete them successfully, but go on to build multiple systems and teach their grandchildren how they work. Age isn't a barrier here. What matters is having clear instructions, understanding the basic principles, and taking it one step at a time. You don't need a contractor. You don't need expensive equipment. You need the knowledge, the materials you can buy from any hardware store for less than $50 and a few hours of your time. The journey you're on, the one that started maybe with just watching videos about energy independence, can actually lead somewhere real. It can lead to lower bills. It can lead to genuine backup power when the grid fails. It can lead to a deeper understanding of how the world actually works, instead of just accepting whatever the utility company tells you is possible. And most importantly, it can lead to the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've taken meaningful action to improve your own situation. So here's what I want you to do right now. If you found this series useful, if you learned something that clicked for you about Earth batteries or low-cost renewable energy, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell. We're releasing new project guides every week, ranging from backup battery systems under $100 to advanced integration strategies that'll help you coordinate everything you've built into one functioning home energy system. You're not going to get this information anywhere else, and you deserve to know that you have options. Then grab the guide from the description or the pinned comment. It's the comprehensive resource that walks you through everything we've covered here, plus the advanced strategies and troubleshooting that'll get you through the tougher questions you'll run into once you're actually building. It's not free, because real practical knowledge has value, but it's priced so that the savings from your first Earth battery alone will pay for it. And after that, everything else is just profit. Your utility company doesn't want you to know that these projects are possible. They want you to believe that energy independence is something only wealthy people with contractors can achieve. They want you to keep paying every single month without question. But you've got something they're counting on you not using: time, space in your backyard, and the willingness to learn. That's more powerful than they admit. Thank you for watching this series on Earth batteries and affordable energy independence. If you found value here, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our weekly releases on budget backyard energy projects. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one where we're building a backup power system for under $100 that'll keep your critical appliances running when the grid goes down. Take care and keep building.